The moment my mother's voice said my name, I knew the whole thing was a setup. There I was, standing under the chandelier at the Willow Ridge Country Club, watching its crystals scatter little rainbow shards across furniture worth more than most people's annual rent, realizing with this cold, sinking certainty, they were about to get rid of me. Quick reminder, most of you aren't subscribed. If you enjoy this, hit subscribe and like now, then let's get back to the story. My name is Rachel Hart, I'm 27, and for most of my life, I've been the wrong-shaped puzzle piece in a family carved entirely from polished mahogany and generational wealth. They've always pretended the mismatch was my fault. Tonight, they weren't even pretending. The maitre d' led me to what he called the family table, though it felt less like a dinner invitation, and more like being called into HR without warning. My father checked his Rolex for the third time in half a minute. My mother adjusted her pearl necklace with the precision of someone who practiced facial expressions like choreography. And my older sister, perfect, razor-smiled Melissa, angled her phone so the lighting hit my face just right, like she was preparing to film a documentary titled, How Failure Looks in the Wild. I sat, leather creaking under me like it was nervous too. Someone dropped a pan in the kitchen, a normal sound in a moment that was anything but. Then my mother slid a velvet box across the table, the kind that usually holds jewelry. It stopped exactly equidistant between the salt and pepper shakers because nothing in my family ever lands anywhere by accident. A fresh start, sweetheart, she said, her smile warm and dishonest. We think you'll love Denver. I opened the box. A one-way plane ticket, leaving in 48 hours. My father followed it with a crisp check, set down with surgeon-like precision. $5,000, he said, to help you get on your feet. Use it wisely, Rachel. Melissa shifted her phone half an inch, catching my reaction from a better angle. She'd probably rehearsed this moment in the mirror the way other people rehearse speeches. They expected me to break. But all I did was breathe once slow, steady, and say, thank you. Their relief rolled across the table like a tide. They thought I was surrendering. They had no idea I'd already won. Because 48 hours earlier, $8.5 million had landed in my bank account. The acquisition of the agricultural analytics platform I'd built. The same one they'd mocked as a cute little science project. The same one that nearly collapsed 6 months ago. The same one I rebuilt from the ashes they were so sure would define me. But they didn't know any of that. They thought this velvet box was my lifeline, not their severance package. I lifted the check carefully, folded it once, slipped it into my purse as if it meant something. My father raised his wine glass. To new beginnings. I raised my water glass and smiled. To freedom, I said in my head. Not the kind they meant. The real kind. My mind flicked back to the night everything started to unravel or maybe finally come together. 6 months earlier, I'd sat in my grad advisor's office at Stanford while he dismantled 3 months of research with a calm sigh. The idea is solid, Rachel, he said. But you need field data. Right now this is just theory. Theory. The word had followed me my whole life. My science fair projects, my college majors, my research, my dreams. Always nice, always impressive, always theoretical. My family didn't care about theory. They cared about Melissa's debate trophies, law review articles, and eventual admission to Yale. She was the heir. I was the background noise. But that night, walking across campus under flickering lamplight, I realized something important. Theory becomes reality when you stop waiting for someone to believe in you. 3 weeks later, I'd secured a grant, hired a tiny development team, built a prototype, and convinced a struggling farm outside Fresno to let me run a pilot. And then I'd watched my system nearly drown a third of their crop. Failure. Real, catastrophic, stomach-dropping failure. The kind my family had always expected. The kind they would later use against me with surgical glee. But failure also leaves footprints. Data. Clues. A trail leading towards something better if you're stubborn enough to follow it. I rebuilt everything. Refined everything. The revised algorithm didn't just work, it was stronger because of the collapse. Adaptive. Resilient. Alive in ways the original could never have been. That was the innovation Agricor bought. The one that made the CEO call me personally. The one that turned my embarrassing side project into a breakthrough. And here my family was believing a $5,000 check and a plane ticket could exile me out of their perfect, curated lives. The waiter set down dessert. Crème brûlée. My mother swore it was my favorite. I'd hated it since I was 12. She'd never noticed. My father cleared his throat, preparing another one of his tough love as a service speeches. My mother dabbed at imaginary tears. Melissa kept recording. They were so certain they'd staged my collapse. They didn't see they'd scripted their own. "Dad," I said gently, "you're right. This is good for me." His shoulders relaxed, victory settling into his posture. If he'd looked closely, really looked, he might have seen something shift in my eyes. Might have realized that acceptance and surrender aren't the same thing. Might have wondered why someone who was supposedly being thrown away wasn't breaking. But he didn't. None of them did. And that's why they never saw it coming. The moment that would shatter their entire narrative. The moment that would turn this night into the beginning of their unraveling. Because at that exact second, my phone buzzed. 10 times. Rapid. Melissa smirked, thinking she knew exactly what the messages were. More relatives praising her and pitying me. But I knew that vibration pattern. It wasn't family. It was the people who actually mattered. The people who knew the truth. The people who were waiting for me to finally step into the life I'd built. I reached for my phone. And when I read the name on the screen, a slow, unstoppable smile spread across my face. Professor Kalin. One message. Heard about AgriCorps. Don't let anyone take this from you. My family kept talking, performing, filming, and they didn't notice that everything had already changed. Because this time, I wasn't the one being sent away. I was the one leaving. By the time I stepped out of the Willow Ridge dining room that night, the cold air hit me like truth itself, clean, sharp, impossible to ignore. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid of what waited outside. I was afraid of what would happen when my family realized the performance they'd staged wasn't the story the world would hear. My name is still Rachel Hart, still 27, still the disappointment they thought they could pack into a one-way ticket and write off before dessert. But walking toward my father's gleaming Mercedes, I felt something unrecognizable humming under my skin. Power. Quiet, steady power. The kind that doesn't need to be announced to be real. Dad asked me to walk him to the car, never a question, always a command. The parking lot smelled like new leather and down payments. His reflection stared back at us from the polished black paint. "This is for your own good, Rachel," he said. His voice had that smooth, corporate authority that usually made people fold. "Someday you'll understand." I met his eyes, steady. I already do. For half a second, confusion rippled across his face. He sensed something was off, but couldn't name it. He wanted me obedient, grateful, small. But that version of me was already dead. Inside the club, I could see my mother working the room, phone pressed to her ear, probably rewriting what had just happened into something flattering. Melissa sat hunched over her laptop, typing with the intensity of someone drafting a press release, which she probably was. I returned to the table long enough to let them think I was still playing their game. Then I did something distinctly unheart-like. I started collecting evidence. Screenshots of the family group chat, photos of the check, the velvet box, audio of my father's parking lot speech, not to use, just to have. Because when people who love control realize they've lost it, they get dangerous. I went home that night and packed. Not for Denver. For Chicago. 2 suitcases, carefully staged to look like I was leaving my life behind. Old jeans, thrifted shirts, none of my real work clothes. My mother would approve. She always liked the version of me who was small enough to manage. A knock came late Sunday morning. My mother, of course. She swept inside without waiting for an invite. Espresso in one hand, surgically sympathetic smile in place. "Moving is so overwhelming," she said, scanning my apartment like it was failing an inspection. She lifted my Stanford diploma, ran a manicured thumb along the frame. "You won't need this in Denver. Fresh starts require clean slates." I placed the diploma back on the table, hiding the real one already shipped to Chicago. "You're right." She beamed. It was frightening how easy it was, how quickly she accepted the version of me she preferred. My phone buzzed on the counter. Her gaze flicked toward it like a hawk. I snatched it up before she could see the preview. AgriCorps Logistics. Furniture delivery confirmed for Chicago address. I muted the notification. "It's the airline," I lied. "Good," she said brightly. "Your father and I will drive you to the airport. Make sure you get on safely." There it was. Not love, verification. After she left, I sat on the bed, surrounded by suitcases full of clothes I'd bought at Goodwill, specifically to deceive her. The Denver boarding pass lay on my nightstand. My real flight, Chicago, 11:35 a.m., was booked on another airline, Another terminal. They taught me this: how to curate reality, how to give people exactly what they expect while living something entirely different. Monday morning, I walked into the airport with them shadowing me like handlers. My mother hugging me with staged tears. My father giving me a stiff shoulder squeeze. Melissa sliding her phone into her pocket after getting footage of me approaching the gate like I was boarding a prison bus. "Take care of yourself, Rach," she said, voice dripping artificial concern. I scanned my fake boarding pass at the Denver gate, stepped down the jetway far enough for them to lose sight, then slipped into a connecting corridor and walked out into another concourse entirely. 11 minutes later, I boarded my real flight. When the wheels left the ground, I felt something I hadn't felt since I was a kid: weightless. At 9 a.m. Eastern, somewhere over Indiana, my phone lit up with the notification that detonated everything they'd built. Forbes. AgriCore acquires groundbreaking AgTech platform TerraSense for $8.5 million. Founder Rachel Hart appointed Director of Sustainable Development. My photo hair clean, smile reel took up half the screen. Then came LinkedIn posts, Stanford announcements, industry analysts, congratulatory DMs from people who knew how hard the last 2 years had been. Meanwhile, at home, my parents probably still thought I was somewhere between Colorado and a fresh start they designed for me. I imagined my father's phone exploding with calls. My mother at her charity brunch, pretending she knew all about my work. Melissa in her Yale study carrel, watching classmates whisper, "Wait, your sister?" And the family group chat? Nuclear meltdown. Relatives I hadn't heard from in years suddenly remembered my number. Aunts and uncles demanding explanations. Cousins furious they were kept in the dark. Dozens of messages asking why my parents never mentioned any of it. The story they'd written: Rachel the failure, Rachel the lost cause, Rachel saved by family generosity, evaporated in real time. When I landed at O'Hare, a driver with a tablet reading Hart waited for me. My new office overlooked Lake Michigan. My apartment keys came in a sleek black envelope, and my phone buzzed with 43 missed calls, 16 voicemails, 62 texts. I didn't answer any of them. But 2 weeks later, something arrived that proved my family wasn't done. Not even close. My new company's legal counsel forwarded it with a subject line that made my stomach tighten. Legal matter, immediate attention required. A letter. On my father's law firm's letterhead. A demand. They were claiming ownership of TerraSense. Claiming the $5,000 check was an investment. Claiming they deserved 30% of the acquisition. They were willing to burn everything: reputation, relationships, truth, to claw back control. I stared at that letter. At the audacity of it. At the threat beneath the legal phrasing. And then I saw something that made the shock crystallize into something colder. They weren't making a claim. They were making a mistake. A fatal one. One I could use. Because they didn't know the check had never been cashed. Not until that moment. Not until I deposited it intentionally. And turned their investment into exactly what it was: final payment for letting me go. And now the clock was ticking. For all of us. I stared at the screenshot of the deposited check, my father's neat handwriting on the memo line, Fresh Start Fund, and felt something settle inside me. Not anger, not triumph, something quieter. The realization that this was the moment everything they had built around me finally collapsed under its own weight. My name is Rachel Hart, 27, Director of Sustainable Development at AgriCore, and for the first time in my life, I wasn't reacting to my family. I was choosing. AgriCore's legal team called within the hour. My boss, Julian, sounded almost amused. "Your documentation is immaculate, Rachel. Their claim won't hold." Of course it wouldn't. I'd spent 6 months recording every line of code, every purchase, every late-night breakthrough, written in time-stamped logs. My family had never believed in my work long enough to touch it now. They were trying to take credit for something they'd shown nothing but disdain for. I sent the screenshot. Not spitefully, methodically, like setting the final piece in place. Then, because my hands didn't shake anymore, I emailed Arthur, Eleanor, and Melissa. Short, clean, professional. Payment acknowledged. All further correspondence can be directed to counsel. And just like that, I closed the door they kept swearing they held open. Weeks passed. Snow dusted the edge of Lake Michigan outside my Chicago windows. I built teams, reviewed prototypes, traveled for field tests, spoke on panels. People asked about algorithms, not family trees. About resilience, not reputation. I stopped glancing at my phone expecting their names. I stopped waiting for permission that was never coming. The framed check hung in my powder room, a private joke, a reminder of the price they put on my future. The people who entered my life now did so because they valued who I was, not who I was related to. Then, Christmas Eve arrived. 47 missed calls from numbers I no longer recognized. And one voicemail I did. My mother's voice, shaking. "Rachel, please. We miss you. It's Christmas." Once that would have gutted me. Once, I would have dropped everything to rush back into a house where love meant performance and acceptance meant shrinking. But I'd learned something in Chicago, something the old me couldn't have understood. Distance isn't abandonment. Sometimes it's healing. That night, my chosen family came over, colleagues, mentors, people who saw me long before the world did. We ate, laughed, filled my penthouse with a warmth that wasn't curated or conditional. Later, drying dishes, I caught my reflection in the dark glass of the window. Lake Michigan stretched behind me like a quiet promise. I looked like myself for the first time. Not the daughter they tried to send away. Not the failure they tried to rewrite. Not the project they tried to own. Just Rachel. Just enough. I whispered it silently, a truth I wished they'd taught me but ultimately learned on my own. Thank you for the seed money. I grew somewhere you never thought to look. And for the first time, the silence that followed didn't hurt. It felt like freedom,